What's up, y'all? It's your co host, Yogi Rich, introducing episode 5 What is Duty? Thank you for joining us so far on OneAnswer Yoga. It's been a pleasure. In this episode, we tease out some of the complexities of duty, what it means to an authentic life, although that there's all these societal pressures that are pulling on us, and legal obligations that mandate certain actions from us that we might not agree with. How do we best find peace of mind in this difficult time? Keeping with our theme, we find ourselves in a society that continuously harms others and harms the earth. How do we best unplug from that system from within and be productive members of this beautiful creation? All right, without further ado, please enjoy episode 5. One love. Peace.
All right,
What's up,
here we
Radha?
are. Good to see you. Welcome back, everybody.
Man, I feel really good this morning. I would say slightly discombobulated too, like you were saying to me before the air, but
Yeah, I was telling Quentin, I'm discombobulated this morning. It's definitely one of those mornings.
absolutely. It's like as soon as I sit down here though, it's like sometimes I get a little excited and I'm a lot of things have been on my mind. Not many things, but just some things. And just kind of building on our previous conversations, I was thinking we touched on duty a little bit. And what was really interesting to me is this sense of duty and really like how to know when you are acting in alignment with sort of what like you feel like your soul calling is, kind of that essence of dharma, but then also how to balance that from the very real life situation you might be in where it's like, okay, my soul is telling me that I need to be spending time with my family, but I'm at this job and it seems like okay, this job appears to be or is told to me, random person, that this would be the vehicle in which I could support or be a helpful contributor to my family, although my conscious in the moment might be telling me something differently.
Yeah.
And so there's the, I will say there's like the financial aspect of it, right? Or like kind of, but then also there's just the legal aspect of it, right? Like one of my favorite, we've mentioned Martin Luther King before, and there's a couple things from him, and then there's also a really cool show named Parks and Rec that a lot of folks might have seen.
I love that you're going to quote Parks and Rec.
Yeah, yeah. So my favorite character on Parks and Rec is Ron Swanson, and Ron, he has a line in there where he's driving some truck or something, and a cop kind of pulls him over, and he's like, do you have a seatbelt or something like that? And Ron Swanson's like, and he's like, no, I don't. I'm not complying with that. And he's like, well, the officer's like, well, you're breaking the law. And then Ron looks at him and he goes, you and I have a very different definition of what law means. And like when you think about Martin Luther King, and that was the whole thing. He was like, these laws are just written on pieces of paper. Like these aren't actually divine laws. But what was also interesting at the same time is he would reference the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence sort of as like laws, if you will, but they're very much like linked to divine inspiration. So given the context of today, right, all the dogmatism that's in the world and just a sense of like we're kind of being pulled in all these directions as Americans or those of us that are kind of in this hemisphere of society, then it feels like, okay, we're always being told what our duty is, right? To be productive members of society, to help provide for our families. But also a huge part of that is to pay 45, anywhere from 20 to 50% of our income in taxes or like do these different things. So yeah, like for like those of us trying to figure that out, like how do those roads interplay where we want to live our authentic soul expression, but then we also live in a society that has certain things that pull us in opposite directions, it seems at times.
Such like a great question, Quentin, because you talked about even divine law, and I would even challenge that quote unquote divine law is subjective. Because if you look at different religions, they're each going to say the laws that they live according to are not always the same.
Mhm.
And so I think that anytime you're looking at laws, they're really just agreements for societies to live together, right? People to live together in a society to be functional and to manage to um, go along. And anything that is going to threaten the unity of the group is going to be considered outside of the law, because you have to have a group that agrees on certain things in order to live together. We know that if anybody is married or has a family, believe it or
Mhm.
not, you have agreements and laws within your family and within your units so that you can live in harmony with each other. Like some people, the law may be, just to use a trope, don't leave the socks on the floor, right? You have to pick your socks up. That's the agreement that you all came up with in order for you to live in harmony. When somebody lives out of that or does some action that's out of that, then it creates disharmony in the unit. And if we're talking about like way back in the day when we had these initial groupings of people together, that could be the difference between life and death, right? If you're hunters and gatherers and all of a sudden somebody says, Nope, I'm not going to gather anymore. I'm going to go out and create art." That can endanger the entire unit. So I understand why laws exist and why in societies we need to do them. However, it seems like in modern day, many of our laws benefit, especially as the societies got bigger, they benefit only certain aspects of the society and they don't benefit other aspects of the society.
Mhm.
So how do we live according to law? Because there is good trouble, right? There is
Mhm.
such a thing as like, yeah, I'll get locked up for that. Like I'm willing to stand for that and say I will get arrested, even though just out of protest of what's happening. But then there's also like, you get locked up. How do you feed your kids? What happens to your spouse? What happens to your greater family if, you're the breadwinner? Sometimes you can't afford to go out there and be the one who's going to get locked up. And so then you're also looking at like layers of privilege.
Mhm.
It is a privilege to go out and protest.
Mhm.
Right? And that's why I'm like, if you're going to go out and protest, like at least just recognize it's a privilege.
Mhm.
It may be a necessity, but it's also a privilege because some people can afford to get arrested. Some people cannot afford to get arrested for whatever reason. And so for us to be like, oh, everybody should be out protesting, that's not very cool and not
Mhm.
very sensitive to the people who have literal, prices they're going to have to pay if they go out and engage in this activity. And so I think you got to be like, I think with everything, I mean, yoga is so like, yoga is so much about neutrality. Like there is no right and wrong. It's all just like the lens through which you view it. And we always, as humans, want to make everything right and wrong. Like we want to
Mhm.
say like, I'm right. And so you're wrong.
Mhm.
And that gives us some sort of feeling of like, okay, we're valid in what we're doing. But the truth is there is no right way for everybody. And so any kind of time when we're judging others is a time to sort of look within and be like, what's going on within me that I feel like I have to make that person wrong in order to make myself feel right.
Mhm.
And I think we see that a lot when people are like choosing to go protest or choosing not to protest, right? Choosing to make some sort of big stance or choosing not to. Well, if you have, like you said, your first job is to take care of Safa, right? That's your home unit. Well, if you going out and getting arrested at a protest is going to do more danger or damage to
Mhm.
Safa than sitting at home, you have the right to make that choice for your family. And I don't like it when everybody's like across society, like judging each other and being like, you didn't go out and march. What's wrong with you? You don't care about the stuff
Yeah.
happening, when really, again, it's a privilege to go out and march.
And if you've never been locked up before, I mean, that's another huge thing
Yeah.
that people don't realize is that, like, I got friends that, like, I mean, even me, like, I don't even like driving around the police, like, not because I don't like the police, but it's just because, just as you said, it's like there's multiple layers here. Everybody's layered, and there's a lot of complexities. Um,
And I
and
think when
what's,
we use the term white privilege too, Quentin,
yeah,
white privilege is not just about the color of your skin also.
yeah,
White privilege also can be like taking on that persona of white privilege. So sometimes there are people of color or people like that who get just as judgmental. But I think their like mentality is that white privilege mentality. Like I can do it, so you should be able to do it. And to me, that's really white privilege. Like, well, I can do it. Why can't you do it? And that's like,
yeah.
wow,
It's
you were
it's
so tone deaf to everything else going on in this situation and the complications of the person's scenario.
Yeah,
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go
no,
ahead.
you're good with me, and and it's like, and white privilege, or you could say like class privilege, or you could say experience privilege, where it's sort of like privilege is an interesting word because I've been playing around with this because you know I don't know if the word to use for me is like patriotic, but the word that I would use is that like I love my wife, I love my family. They all live in America. So it's like so through that, like I love my life and also my friends and all the extended things and all the coworkers that I've
Yeah.
met, like just me personally, my personal life is very much in the zeitgeist. And like what that means to me is that like I've got white, quote unquote, white friends that are, but really they're like Italians and Irish and Eastern European, and some are Russian and some are Finnish.
Ukrainian.
Yeah, Ukrainian. You know what I mean? Like, and if you really care, like, and you get to know these types of folks, like me, I went to Virginia Tech, so Virginia Tech was like 88% white. So it was like to me, like that didn't really work anymore because now it's like everyone's white. So it's like really it's like the kids from Giles County and the kids from Galax and the kids from like rural Montgomery
Mm,
County that like they're coming they go to Virginia Tech full time, but they're working like they're wearing work boots and they're in Carhartt and they're like dressed like as 19-year-olds, you know what I mean, getting their degrees in civil engineering or whatever. So it was like that's completely different than the rich kids from Fairfax
yeah, it
that
is.
both parents are lawyers. And so like from my experience it was sort of like and also just growing up in Stafford where like Stafford I think demographically was like 55% white I think when I graduated high school. And but but what was very interesting there about like that experience and like why I say class and also like say social too put together because like in our like in our society like black culture for sure was the most popular culture. Like when I was growing up, like that was definitely the dominant
Yeah.
culture. Like no one was listening to country. Like even my kids, they'd be like they would listen to country music like in the cut, but it was like anytime it was something public facing. So what I've like come to realize is that like um and the reason why I use this word is because like in Denver is extremely white too, right? And so they kind of like
I wonder,
they're
like, I hear, like, did all the people of color not make it out to, except for maybe
we're
Mexicans, right? There's a
yeah,
lot
but
of
not
people of
even but
Hispanic descent or Latinx out in that area, but like you're always like, apparently when people were going west,
yeah, no,
the
I mean
black people were like, nah, we're good.
not right now. And I
We
think now's
just
the
we
time.
came across the Atlantic in really, really sketchy circumstances. We don't need to go get in the covered wagon and go out west
Yeah,
for whatever
with
you guys think
y'all.
you're gonna
Yeah,
find.
yeah. Yeah, you're telling me to go out there? Yeah, we're gonna wait until you yeah, we're gonna let for you to see
What
how
do
it
you
goes.
think?
We'll
But
try
it's a shock
California.
to me, coming from the East Coast, obviously. Every time I go
Yeah,
out west, I'm like, it is
yeah.
really white out here.
It is. It is. It is. And it's like I think for like us, like, my generation, our future generations, that's kind of like our goal is like we gonna get out here and live life no matter what. But also like kind of like what I've realized is like a lot of black folk that I know, we go around like a lot of the times like a lot of white folk internalize that privilege and they start to hate themselves is what I've realized. So then they feel like it's a part of the duty to like part of that drive to be so socially active ends up coming from a little bit of an insecurity. And my
Mhm.
main thing to all them, and this is what I was going to lead with, I was like, the reason why I started with like the American thing is like Thomas Jefferson and all those folks and people in that lineage, like we got to have a little respect. Martin Luther King was able to reference them and be like, this is not what you said on paper. This is supposed to be the life that we have. And that we can, even though like, and that's kind of the tricky part about being American, right? Like I said, and especially my generation growing up like during the wars is like, every single day is like this is a nation under God. The Constitution starts like the whole point of our nation as we were sort of told was that like we're supposed to this is the nation that represents the fact that God is real and that we are an expression of him and that governments are instituted amongst men to protect like that reality. He's like he even starts off the Declaration of Independence by saying law's nature, like the nature of law and the creator of that law. And since those things are real, then like the king basically can't do all these things, all these kings. And it was like,
Yeah.
it was a huge thing.
Wow.
So it's a
Wow.
very, it's important. And I think because we talk about duty and basically in there, and it's very, another part is very interesting because this is relevant because this is the privilege that we use to judge other countries, because our Declaration of Independence says it is a duty for the governed, if the government is no longer acting in the benefit of its people, to overthrow that government. So then every time you hear us, we go, well, Iran should just overthrow its government, or
Yeah.
Syria needs
Oh,
to
that's so
overthrow its government.
good.
You know? And then,
Oh,
but the best part, my favorite part of it is Thomas Jefferson. It's not even like the all men created equal, which I think is fire. Brings, it's crazy. It's dope. But what I think is even cooler about it is when he's listing the grievances against the king, right? He's like, the king did this, the king's doing this, the king's doing this. And one of the things he says in there that is the most fire line and is most relevant to today, I feel like, is he's like, the king is using subversive means to turn people against each other and to use he called them the Indian savages with, we won't use that language now, but he's basically saying you're using these people on our frontiers as weapons against us, your own colony, your own people. So you're like subverting you're using internal domestic, essentially, tools to divide the people, and then you're inciting external invaders, if you will, for lack of a better word, to disrupt the nation. And then another thing he says is like, you put military power above civilian power. And I
amazing.
thought that was a super interesting point of view. And I think those are some of the things that we're dealing with today. It's like, over these last couple years, and like we're talking about duty, it's like, yeah, back in the day when it was like 100 of us, like, it was very hard for us to really do each other wrong. And there was a lot, we were a lot closer with each other. Now the people that are, these folks that we're talking about that create laws and create systems to benefit just a few, like they're far away. They're, DC to like California might as well be like England to DC, to Virginia. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that type of energy
Or
where,
rural Virginia to California might as well
yeah,
be.
might as well,
There's
might
so
as
little
well.
that they have in common. There's so little continuity between even what matters to them in life and what's important and how they view their families and their life and the difficulties. And I mean, it's one of the challenges of running a country like this where you have so much diversity and so many people who are living just really different, geographical circumstances, social circumstances, cultural circumstances. Like it's amazing, really. And really like a testimony to those forefathers that we've managed to keep it together as long as we have, because there is this ideal, and we're all brought up with this ideal of this like Declaration of Independence and this Constitution that we really believe is like our right. Like that's the
Mm.
funny thing about Americans, right? Like we believe it is our right, right? Freedom is a right, and you don't step on it.
Mm.
It's one of the reasons why, I think societally we have some issues because we always put the individual above the collective,
Mm.
because my personal freedom is my birthright. That makes for a very difficult social fabric. Right?
Yeah.
When you're looking at like social structure, that is not natural to social structure to be like, I, the individual, matter more than the collective. And you see that in a lot of like, if you're going back and looking like more indigenous cultures, very rarely are you going to see that attitude because you need the collective to be so important. I think every time I go to a country that has a different way of like operating, particularly, being in some place that is very socially oriented, like India or like even Mexico, or like things are built around the collective and the family and the good of
Yeah.
the people,
Yeah.
that is like amazing to me because I'm like,
Mm.
no, it's my individual right that matters the most. And of course, when you're looking at everybody else through the lens of your own experience and your own beliefs, then it can become really tricky to, first of all, find compassion and understanding. I mean, yeah, like I love that you brought that up about Iran because, like, yeah, everybody's like, overthrow your government.
much easier said than done, bro. And then on top of
That's
that, it's
easier
like,
said than done. And like, also, what gives us the right to go turn to another country and say you have to exist the way we exist?
yep,
Otherwise, you were wrong. We choose to live this way because we're Americans. Like this is our country. We get to choose how we want to live according to our country. But what I really dislike about Americans is their insistent need to go out and tell the rest of the world that they have to behave just like us.
mm-hmm.
That's probably what bothers me the most about, you know, how we behave in the world. And we do it all over the place. Like eat like us, dress like us. Even our complete arrogance of never bothering to learn another language. But
Yeah,
every time we travel, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, I travel a lot around the world. I expect everybody to speak English so that I can do that. And
yeah.
that is like crazy arrogant. I mean, it's like I'm just shocked at myself sometimes when I'm like in another country and I'm like,
You know,
I didn't even bother to learn enough to like communicate some basics. Like, come on, you're
mm.
so arrogant, Radha.
I mean, it's like I the reason why I like us sharing this stuff and like because I feel like America's so big and it seems so like especially if you're not from America, like it seems so different from the outside than it is on the inside. And it's like all the immigrant friends I meet that are like my age, so like kids that grew up and went to high school in their countries and then came here, like I'm like, so are you living the dream? Like, are you living the American dream? Like, are you living the life that you thought? And like, no, no, like I'm still because there's this like misconception here, and this is like part of the arrogance and part of like, I'm guilty of it too. Like, oh my goodness, like all my life is like, why would I go to why would I go to that little place? Like everything that you could ever ask for is here. Like this is and because every day we're told this is the best place, this is the gold standard, can't you see, like, damn near God wrote those documents we were talking about earlier. Like, and then like, as I was saying a little bit before, we went to the moon, we've invented planes, we invented all these sorts of things. And then we have shows like Friends or whatever that are outsourced to the world. And,
Let's be honest, Friends is the pinnacle of all entertainment.
yes.
The person that doesn't like Friends.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, oh my God, I have to go to New York. I have to go here. I have to do this. I have to do that. And so what's the beautiful thing about being in like growing up here is that like, especially like where I grew up is like, since that was the energy, I got to meet all these beautiful people that are from all over the place. And just like you're saying, it's like a lot of the folks that are my age, we know that our homies that are Vietnamese or Middle Eastern or wherever, that like, a huge part of the reason why they came here is because of what you're saying. They might have felt that the individual was more muted. They were attracted to that message, but their whole families is all about the family, right? Their whole family dynamics are completely different. So a lot of us that are like in my generation, like we've grown up with a different points of views because a lot of the travel that you've had, a lot of the world knowledge you had to do to travel, if you have a diverse friend group, you get a lot of that wisdom here. And then on top of that, your friends, you got good enough homies, you might go to travel with them to go back to El Salvador or go with them to Japan or go to wherever they're from. But the main reason why I like was thinking about all of these different things is because like we're talking about duty. So it's like, um, there's this sense of social responsibility. And I wonder like to what extent like, I have my own personal ideas, but to what extent do like yogic teachings help you filter through the noise? So you have like you got your friends that are like, where are you at? I expected you to be here and protesting with me on this particular issue. Like from that to, I see you're shopping at Nike, don't you know? Like, or like that type of thing. How do you?
Oh my
What are
gosh,
some
well,
tools
I
you
have
can
a
do?
Tesla, believe me, I know.
Yeah,
And
exactly,
I
yeah,
need
exactly.
to
Like
drive
you
a
have a
Tesla.
Tesla,
What is
like
wrong with
get
you?
it, don't you? I've got like I
Literally
got
was
like
gonna go visit a friend recently, Quentin,
yeah,
and I wanted to
yeah.
go stay with my friend, and I was like, I don't think she's gonna feel comfortable with me having my Tesla in her driveway. So literally this was my thought process. Like, I probably should not go visit them because I
Mm,
literally know that like a Tesla being parked in their driveway is gonna cause them like
just
angst.
dismay. Mm.
And so I was just like, you know what? We'll go visit. Like, I won't go to their house, so the Tesla doesn't have to be in there. This is the kind of crazy that
Yeah.
we live in right now. Is like,
Exactly.
no, I drive a Tesla because it is saving the planet. Like, it is a good car. It is better than driving a gas-powered car. I'm sorry that Elon Musk does a lot of other stuff, but so does every company. Like,
So does every person. Yeah, it's
but
like
when I
that
was young, Quentin, I used to boycott the heck out of everybody. I mean, like, when I was young, I was really passionate about what was going on in the Middle East. And so
100%.
the situation with Palestine, 20, 30 years ago was just completely heartbreaking for me.
Mhm.
And so I was the first to like boycott everything. So when people are like, hey, how come you're not boycotting Tesla? I'm like,
You
I
got your eyes
understand.
on the
Like,
you
I
got your
used
eyes
to
on the
do the
ball
same
too.
thing. So, I can't be hypocritical and be like, oh my gosh, and you're being so unreasonable. I'm like, yeah, well, I used to boycott a lot of stuff in my,
I had my turn. Yeah, and I understand. I like
yeah,
that. I like that.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's like to me, like I'll put it this way. So it's like a lot of folks that are in traditional faith traditions is very clear on how to serve the community, right? Especially like in Islam, right? It's very clear, right? These are the
Hmm.
things, these different things. Like, but I'm noticing, for better or for worse, hopefully for much better. It feels better, but we don't know. Um, 20 years from now, the next president, 30 years from now, they might be yogis. They might actually have had they probably might have a meditation practice. Like
Most likely.
most, you know what I'm saying? Like that is a much higher likelihood than it has ever been before.
I mean,
Right?
our second lady is Hindu.
Exactly.
People
Exactly.
don't talk
Like,
about it a lot, like, because JD Vance has his own
yeah. I
agenda
mean,
and Trump has his own
even
agenda. But our second lady is a Hindu. She is not Christian. That is not for nothing.
that's not for nothing. And even uh Vice President Harris, her mom was Hindu. And
Hmm.
she's named, the name that she has is like based off of, I don't know all the theories, but I know it's one of the 10 goddesses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and
She had
then
a Sanskrit name, just like me. Like Kamala had a Sanskrit name because she was raised in that. And honestly, like, that will be more prevalent just because of the way that our culture and society is going. We may see some backlashes in certain ways, but like, there is going to be, I mean, probably, we will have a Jewish president one day. Wouldn't be surprised, right? We haven't had a Jewish
100%.
president, which is actually kind of shocking because there's a lot of Jewish bankers and
Don't get
Jewish.
in trouble now. No, I'm playing. I'm
There is.
just
There's a
kidding.
lot,
I'm just
right?
kidding.
Of like Jewish culture that is definitely, I would say, at least in my experience, and again, maybe just because of my background, but I feel like that's always shocking to me. Like, I'm always shocked that we haven't had like a Jewish president yet.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. I mean,
Like, can you
Michael.
imagine we might have a Hindu in the White House before we'd have a Jewish
But you know
president?
what's interesting about that? So this is why I love this place so much, right? Because this was a part of the experiment, freedom of religion, and even like when we talk about, um, was it truthfulness? Like non-disrespecting another person's religion is a form of like non-violent speech. And but anyway, so like not just that, right? So the CEO of Google, I don't know if he's Hindu per se, but I know he grew up in India.
Yes,
And
he did.
earlier today, the is he a congressman? I don't know. He might be in the House of Representatives, but the person who represents Silicon Valley is also Hindu.
Not
And
surprising.
you know what I mean? So this is what
Yeah.
I'm getting at. Like in all, I mean, like just the realization and the respect that this is like a huge part of this nation was the religious freedom, and also like a huge element of it, because it's like, okay, in this country it's explicitly stated that this is meant to be a religiously diverse and prosperous nation. And you see that, like, okay, I don't I guess I'll put it this way, like faith or your relationship to faith matters when it comes to your sense of duty and responsibility. Like, and I would say, like, yoga itself, isn't really a faith, but it, some people say, like, one book title, The Holy Science. That's like kind of an interesting way to put it, I'd say. Or, the science of peace of mind, or the science of religion, or something like that. Those are kind of like different ways to go about it. But I feel like it's worth just talking about, like, specifically, like, what is conscience, what is intuition, what is instinct, where do these things come from, and are we meant to follow those forces, as opposed to societal pressures, societal forces. And then because this is where I land on it, is it'll go, okay, let's like use a hypothetical scenario, like let's do the protest scenario and I might get arrested, right? Is there something I can do that'll help me know, okay, this, all the other times I didn't protest, like, okay, that wasn't worth it, but this calculation is, right? How, like, what advice would you give to someone who's like trying to figure out, okay, am I listening to my ego? Am I listening to, as a Toltec say, the voice of knowledge? Am I listening to this, my mind's thought, all the clamoring, other people's voices, what my friend might think about my Tesla parked in front? Or am I being authentically, like, expressing to the best of my ability what should actually happen? Is this, how can someone tell if going to jail is worth it or risking their life is worth it? What advice would you give?
So let me just sidestep for a second here. You're going to, throughout these podcasts, you'll hear me use different terminology. Often I refer to God just because that's a common word that is easily relatable for many people. The concept of God is some guy sitting up in the sky is not what I'm referring to. It's more God consciousness. For me, when I look at God, personally, this is just my own personal belief, kind of based on yoga, is that when you break down all the atoms, when you break down all the individual molecules, everything that makes up who we are, science keeps finding that there is space. There's this just infinite amount of space that exists. And in this space is just like this energy space stuff that they don't really understand. And they keep trying to break all the components down smaller and smaller. And at the end of the day, there's just something that exists. To me, that is God, right? The thing when we say I am God, there's no separation between me and you, or me and this microphone, or me and this cup. I mean, on a molecular level, we think this cup is ending and my hand has a flat, like this cup is separate from my hand. But when I touch this cup, on a molecular level, there's an intermingling. And when I pull my hand away, it doesn't separate. All of a sudden, all the molecules of hand got pulled out and all the molecules of cup stay. There's still an intermingling of everything. So for me, that's what I kind of refer to as universe. I often use the term universe just because it's a little bit easier to disconnect from this idea of God, like sitting up in the sky somewhere judging people. But for this purpose, I'm going to use the term God because Swami Satchidananda would often default to God. I was listening to and this was like such an aha moment for me. Again, like, can you imagine, like 51 years or something I've been listening to Swami Satchidananda speak, and it never hit me quite like it did this time. I was listening to one of his satsangs or his talks, and somebody asked the question, how do you know it's God's will? And his answer was so simple. He said, because it's done. And all of a sudden, it was like light bulbs went off in my head. I was like, oh, then there's no point in worrying about it, second guessing it, replaying it in my head, thinking, oh my gosh, did I make the right choice? Did I do the right thing? Once it's done, you know it was God's will because it's done. So everything played out exactly as it was supposed to play out. And you don't even have to worry about it anymore. So if you go to the protest and you're there and you get arrested, don't question it. Just be like, well, I guess it was God's will. For me, the harder part is thinking about, like, how do I behave in this moment? What do I do with this moment that I have? And how do I know whether that is God's will or not? Still, my little human brain struggles with that. But like, once it's done, that's the easy part. Once it's over, like, was I supposed to say what I just said? I said it. Therefore, it's God's will. It's done. And so now I just get to live with whatever that is. And that doesn't mean there's not consequences. There's not, in leadership training, we always say there's a price you pay for every choice you make. It doesn't mean you're not going to pay prices. It doesn't mean that things aren't going to happen. That karma reacts. Like, you did an action, now there's going to be reaction. It doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means that that's how everything plays out. So at the very least, I would say do yourself a solid and just start allowing yourself to accept that once it's done, it's done. It couldn't have happened any differently than how it happened. It was supposed to play out in this divine, process. And any way that you believe in God, honestly, like I've looked at this from different religious viewpoints. And if God is this all powerful being, if God has the ability to give or take away breath, if God has the ability to allow you to live longer or take your life away, if God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, has these abilities, then certainly there is some, and of course in yoga there is some belief that there's some pre-planned existence that is happening. So then if it's all pre-planned, if it's all playing out as it's meant to play out for you to, because ultimately our purpose on this planet is to get back to source, to realize we are source. And so if we, or God, but if we, so everything that we go through, every experience we have is bringing us back to that awareness that we're source. And it's lessons we get to learn or experiences we get to have to remind us, to remind us, to remind us. Then in that case, of course, it played out exactly as it was supposed to play out. And I got to say, like, when you start living that, life gets so much easier. It gets really good. Because all of a sudden you're like, boop, done. Okay. I used to like, they say depression, often the source of depression is looking backwards too much. And anxiety is looking forward too much.
Yeah.
So anxiety is worrying about what's going to happen in the future. Depression is often related to what happened in the past. When you can start to just exist in this present moment and just be like, I just have this moment and all I got to do is just figure out this moment. Figure out like not what I'm doing, but who I get to be in this exact moment. Then all of a sudden, those things get a lot more manageable. And coming from someone who's had just severe anxiety and depression over their lifetime, it's such a key part of my healing to just be like, it's done. It had to happen that way. And that goes for some pretty tough things that I've been through. That's not like me saying like, oh, okay, it's done. I'm so happy and I've had such an easy life. No, like some pretty challenging stuff in life. I mean, we didn't even talk about like my boyfriend that overdosed on heroin. Like he was the love of my life at the time. And we didn't talk about, that multiple friends I lost early on in life. Like I've had so many friends, good friends pass away. It's so, but I have to look at it every moment of like, okay, it's done. That had to happen that way. How do I exist in this moment, integrate it, and then move forward? Because for me, like I was saying, my religion is just kindness towards myself, kindness towards everyone around me. Because I don't know any religions that don't talk about being horrible. Like every religion has some sort of way of living, right? Whether it's the 10 Commandments, the yamas and yamas, like every structure that is supposed to bring us to a higher state of ourselves is going to have some moral code along with it, because you need kind of moral codes in order to interact with other people. For me, my biggest moral code is just try to be kind. Like if I just wake up every day and I spent most of the day being kind, that to me is like such a win. I'm like, I don't care what else I did that day. Because again, it goes back to this whole idea of how do you make people feel? They won't remember what you said. They won't remember what you did, but people will always remember how you made them feel. And so the moments when I look back at myself and I go, ew, that was not a great day. It usually stems back to, I didn't make somebody feel very good. Like I said something, did something that caused someone a ripple effect. And I'm not saying I'm responsible for how people feel. But I know that if my actions contributed to that, then I'm going to go to bed that night and not feel so good about myself and how I showed up that day. I don't know if that kind of answered.
No. It's what you described was like Isvara Pranadana, which is just like surrender to the supreme being, or just surrender to life. Just surrender and be like, okay, these things happen, and like, I'll put it this way. So like, you and many others, you probably have you would probably consider yourself okay at self-awareness, right? Yeah, at the very least, like okay at noticing what thoughts are coming in your mind. And I think like, so there, I think that's where a lot of folk would want to start, because I think, Swami Kurananda, or just other folks put it this way, where it's like, the difference internally between like, you get to recognize, I'll put it this way, you get to recognize the intuitive voice versus like the thinking voice, or you get to, or
We
like,
have practiced for a really long time. We have
there you
practiced.
go.
It is
So
not
that's, so what
innate.
I'm,
It's not something you learn. It's something you practice
you
for a
practice.
very long time. And so that's where you
what's a,
have 50 years maybe of practice.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what's a practice that someone could do to get them started on that awareness? Because I think, I would say, a lot of the folks that I know, and me included, especially when I first got started, it's like, you just don't know what thoughts to trust. Like, a really low level example is like, you're like, I would see my neighbor, an older woman, not old, but an older woman than me for sure, and like, she would have a bunch of groceries, right, in her bag. So my like, it's not even a thought, it's like a thrust to go help her move her stuff up into her place, whatever. But then, like, so that's like the thrust, and then I noticed, because I practice noticing, you could say, or I'm practicing what thoughts come, like what else happens in the mental space after that thrust happens, and it goes, well, you're in a rush to go back inside, like you kind of got to pee a little bit, you could go in there. Oh, you don't want to be creepy, you're going to be alone with this person, yada yada yada, and then what'll end up happening is I might not take that action. But I think what I've observed over time is like, as I've practiced more certain practices, or tried to view life a little bit differently, then it's like, okay, well, the next time that thrust of urge happens again, like say that experience happens again, and then those thoughts come, I have more data now to be like, okay, I don't have to comply with the secondary thoughts that are making me less kind, for lack of a better word. And it's like, I feel like there's already like that internal, especially as like a little kid, you already have like an internal program of how to act. And then like as life goes on, so domestication system kind of goes on, and it's like, well, there's all these different things and different things to consider that might have you act less instinctually. So what I'm going to put the things together. So like for me personally, I resonate with what you said, like what's done is done. And I feel that same way about intuition, of those internal sensations that I've observed are a little bit different than, say, triggers, or some things that might be a response to thoughts, or things that I've picked up over the years from other people. But the more that I realized that, like, okay, I'm going to follow that intuition to do this thing, and then I'll just say it was my instinct to do that. I didn't think that through. And I think that's another thing too. There's a lot of, in our culture, there's so much emphasis on thinking things through, being a planner, being like, you want to be able to have a long, thorough, thought out, articulate answer for every
Yeah.
single action that you take.
Mhm.
But as I've, so I think that's where a lot of folks are. They're in that space where they're trying to practice listening to that heart voice, or like that quieter but more deep and resolute, like urge. Don't even know the right words for it, as opposed to like what's up here and what's on top and what's telling you to maybe act less kind. And the reason why I want to emphasize that point is because Bob Marley has this thing that just resonates so much with me, and he goes, John, I are the only things in existence. What he means by that is like, there's only you in the universe. There's only you and everything else,
Mhm.
like, for lack of a better word. And that's kind of the game you're playing. So, um, that karma that you're talking about, like, if you're planting those, you could say, like, you could think of this more like selfishly, I guess. If you're trying to plant those seeds of doing good deeds, like, it might not come back from that person, but that the entire universe got your back, because it's just you and the universe. Like, you don't need
Yeah.
to expect return from an individual, because it's you and the universe, right? You and God, or whatever, Jesus, whatever resonates for you. And so all of these actions in which you're trusting that, like, instinctual, intuitive, universal pulse, as opposed to following like the orders of like the mind and all of the thoughts that like, you know, your grandma's voice and your mom's voice and these people's voices that are like kind of in your head manifesting as advisors. Like I found in my personal life that the practices have helped me identify that conscious thrust as opposed to the mind stuff. And then the more that I operate under that guise of like, okay, this urge just came up for me. I don't know exactly where it's from. It's not selfish. It's not harming others. I'm gonna practice it. And then I've realized that the more that those things happen, the more that you kind of water the rest of your life. Or like from your point of view, the rest of your life starts to benefit. So instead of like using an example, like let's say the next time that person needs help taking their groceries up, right?
Yeah.
I actually do it. And I'm thinking like my mind would have said, no, your wife's gonna be mad or da da da, or just whatever, like just stupid stuff, right? And then you get into the next situation and she's happier than ever. I haven't even seen her happy to see me. That I might come back home and see my wife, and she might be happier than I had ever seen her in a week or two. Didn't even know that I did that, but just that energy. And you're saying that the influence, how you are, influences others, and they don't forget. So and how you are, it's like how you are is always touching others. You know, I like the cup analogy where like you don't really like stop touching, you don't, your influence on things doesn't really stop like in the same visual way that we think it does. So like acting in accordance, I found, with like that quiet heart voice rather than like all the mental lingerings, has produced more environments where I feel like I can be more that myself. And it also is like, because one thing that you said, there's someone that might have killed someone and they're like, what do you mean, like just because it's done, it was God's will? No, that was me. I was high, I feel guilty, I'm terrible. Or someone it was me that did it. Like, you know, you might feel that way about yourself, and you have to take the same approach where like what you're saying, where it's like, hey, look, at that time in my life I was under those influences. There was no other way it was going to happen, and it happened for a reason. Like most of the coolest OGs, most of the coolest saints have been sinners before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so anyway, so that's that. I think like just that's why yoga is so important, because it calms the mind stuff, so that mainly the voice mainly that urge that's left that you're experiencing. You know, I've found, maybe, you know, maybe you say what you feel, but like I found that when that mind is still, that like heart speaking voice, or like that conscious voice, or that intuitive whatever, with that stuff, it's louder and it
Mhm.
feels different, and it's louder.
Yeah.
And it can't be stilled. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like unavoidable in a way. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Sorry.
Oh, this is good. So one of the things I often try to presence to the people around me is, just because you thought it doesn't make it true.
Mm,
So many people think their thoughts are like real. Like, I thought it, therefore it has to be true. My mind
mm,
told me this, therefore it has to be true. One thing, when you have had mental health issues, or you've been around a lot of people who have mental health issues, you start to
mm,
realize the mind lies to you a whole heck of a lot more than people realize who don't have mental health issues. Because when you have a mental health problem, then you're like, oh yeah, my mind is telling me all this stuff, it's not real. And that's one of the things that we do, like the
mm,
beginnings of therapy, is like learning kind of like how to look at your thoughts and realize, just because you think it doesn't mean that that's an absolute reality.
mm,
So that's really Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is like really analyzing, questioning. And so then the other thing that becomes good along with Jnana Yoga is just being curious.
mm.
Like being curious about your own self, but also being curious about, I can't tell you how many people come up to me and is like, you know, um, so and so feels this way, or so and so said this, and I think this. And I'm like, did you ask them? No, I know that this is, how do you know if you didn't ask them?
Mm.
So, like, you can want to go to help that lady with the groceries. Maybe she wants help, maybe she doesn't want help. But you spend all this mental energy trying to figure out whether you should go do it or not, and whether she's going to be offended, and whether this is. It would be so simple if you just said, ma'am, can I help you with your groceries? And
Mm.
she either says yes or no. And then all of a sudden, you didn't waste all this mental energy on something that could have been solved with a simple question. And I think we don't question, I think we're not curious enough. Like, I really think every opportunity is an opportunity to be curious, like curious about someone's motivations, curious about why would they, somebody comes in and starts screaming at you. Our initial response is to react and be like, God, what a bitch or what an asshole. Like, I can't
Yeah.
believe they came in and they were screaming and yelling at me. And our egos flare up, as opposed to just being like, this has nothing to do with me. This person came in and now I'm really curious, like, wow, that seems like a really big reaction for the situation. I wonder what's going on with them. And then all of a sudden so much compassion comes because you're like, it's no longer about you. And we want, our egos want to make everything about us because obviously we are us. So we think the whole world revolves around us. That's just natural, of course. Like, in a way, that's like what Bob Marley was saying also, was like, it's just me and the universe, me and God. That's all that exists. So everything comes through our filter, but that doesn't mean our filter is clear. Our filter is clean. It just means it's a filter. And so if you can start to be like, I'm really curious about why Safa was so angry today. Huh. Like, I wonder what's happening. Like, maybe it's hormonal. Maybe she didn't get enough sleep. Maybe, with D, I'm like, often I ask him, like, hey, what's going on in that head of yours? Like, what's happening right now? I'll ask that a lot, like, what's happening right now? Because, like, he'll be grumpy or he'll respond to me in some way. And instead of me reacting and being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you spoke to me like that, I'll be like, wow, okay, so what's going on with you at this moment? Because you're obviously having some sort of moment that I don't, that obviously has nothing to do with me just sitting here and you coming in and yelling. Not that D yells a lot. I'm using that as an example, but and so just trying to be like really curious, and that to me is Yana Yoga also. Like, it's not just like analyzing, but it's also a lot of curiosity, like looking deeper into things, constantly asking questions. So saying, and then you can also be curious about your own self. So why did I react that way? What was underneath that? Like, what made me go into that scenario and somebody said something to me and then I responded in that manner? And so that's what you're talking about, like the practice of like analyzing, the practice of looking at everything that you're saying or doing. And it takes a lot of practice. It's constant. Now, to really gain more mastery over that, you have to practice something a lot. So if you're just starting, I think the first thing is just observance. Don't even like do anything except for just observe. And so the observance can start with practical things in your life. I think that there's twofold of the observance. One is sit silently in quote unquote meditation, but really it's more concentration at that point. Just sit and just watch what comes up. That's the first step of meditation, is not to do some sort of action, but just to sit, observe the breath maybe, and then see what thoughts are coming up. And the best way to see, like to gauge yourself for the day, where you are, how you're feeling, what's coming up for you in your life, is just to sit quietly. And it's so rare that we sit quietly. And I think that's why so many people find meditation to be so powerful, because there's very opportunities for us to just sit quietly. Luckily, a lot of the research is now showing that, like, if you are going to build something big, if you're going to be a CEO of something, if you're going to be a huge creator of something, you got to have time where you just sit and do nothing. And the instinct is, especially when you're in that managerial phase, it's like, no, I got to be working all the time. I got to be controlling everything. I got to be on top of everything all the time. But really, if you don't have that space and time just to observe, first of all, you can't create beautiful, amazing things. And I think that's why I also think it's interesting that some of these tech guys are now admitting to smoking weed or using LSD or other things like that, because one of the cool things about smoking weed or eating gummies or whatever, just anytime you engage with this sacred plant, is that it causes you to slow down and pause and just be quiet, right? And you just, I mean, how many people are high or stoned or just sitting there like staring at a wall, just like being. And so I think that's really powerful to, like, that's why people are so drawn to that, because it creates like just this space in your mind all of a sudden where your mind expands and you're able to just like observe and see things and hear things that you just don't in your normal cluttered daily life. But you can start to create that through the practice of just sitting and being and observing. And that's why I think meditation, especially in the morning and the evening, can be really powerful, because you can start your day with like, let's get a litmus test, right? Let's get a
Mhm.
temperature for where I'm at today. And then let me go ahead and see how I can engage with the world. Today I needed a temperature test, right? Like of, oh, I am discombobulated today. Like I am not my 100% on itself. I'm a little bit more disorganized, so then I can look and see what's coming up. And for me, it can be like, okay, I'm perimenopausal. I still menstruate. Hormonal stuff is all over the place,
Yeah.
and that is no joke. So for me, I suspect today it's a little bit like hormone shifting, and I'm like, okay, wow, well, now I have a different brain, a different body, a different everything because of what's happening. And that's really like when people say, like, when you show up on the mat and you're really asking yourself, like, who am I today? That is the way I like to show up in everything that I do. Just be like, don't assume that I am who who I was yesterday. So I can't necessarily do the same pose the same way every single day. That's not yoga.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's not like I'm an automaton or I'm, working out and I'm doing the same exercise. No, the real yoga is when you get to the mat and you just pause for a moment and say, I'm just going to be present to who I am today. And that means it takes a lot of humility and a lot of calm and a lot of presence, because we like to override ourselves so much and just go
Mhm.
on that automatic because it feels really good. And it is humbling when you are on the mat and you can't do what you did yesterday and you want to. And you're like, but I did this pose. Yes, I stood on my head yesterday. I did it. And then the next day you can't do it for whatever reason. Your balance is off. You are a little bit more tired. And to go and be present on the mat and just say, I can't do it today. That's not what my body's doing. That's not who I am today. That to me is like the greatest level of yoga. And then when you start to bring that off the mat into your life and having those moments of check-in in the morning and in the evening and saying, okay, let me just be still and silent for 10 minutes and just get a temperature check. Where am I at today? And all this stuff will start coming up, right? The thoughts start like arising. And so the practice of meditation or concentration is that you don't get caught up in the thoughts, because you don't want to just like obsess or anything like that. This is really just a witnessing process so I sit down this morning and I'm like, oh, my back hurts today. Then I'm not going to go and just like, sometimes you do get distracted. Don't be
Yeah,
mad at
yeah.
yourself if you go on a
Uh,
5-minute tangent about how your back hurts. But the second you realize that you've gone on this like journey, then you bring yourself back to your point of concentration. The tip of the nose and the breath is a really easy one for people, because you can feel the breath come in and out of your nostrils. And so it's a very tangible, tactile thing that can bring you back to the present moment. So it's useful just to be like, once you find your mind wandering off and you realize it, then you're like, oh, just gently bring it back to the breath. And then just feel the inhalation and exhalation out your nostrils. And then the next thing bubbles up. And the next thing you know, like stuff will bubble up like you just didn't even know was in there. Now, if you're not aware of this and you just jump out of bed and head into your day, right? No, there's nobody here, but how many of you have woke up on the wrong side of the bed, right? That is a phrase for a reason, because you feel like, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. Everything is going wrong. I'm stubbing my toe. I dropped my toothbrush in the toilet. Everything starts to go wrong. Part of that is because there's all this stuff that's running, all these tapes and everything that's running underneath that you're not even aware of, and it's keeping you out of being present and in the moment. And so if you can just get up and have these moments of check-in in the morning, it can completely transform your entire day. 10 minutes is what I would recommend starting with. If you can't do 10 minutes, do 5. If you can't do 5, do 3. Eventually, Swami Satchidananda would always say, like, the ideal is 30 minutes 3 times a day to be in meditation. I've been practicing for 52 years of yoga or something.
mhm.
I still don't do 30 minutes 3 times a day without fail. I know very few people actually who achieve that. It seems so simple and easy, but to do it day after day after day after day after day, year after year after year without fail. Yeah, I've gone years of my life where I did that and then something happened and then it fell to the wayside. So consistency is key. Doing it is key. So just make sure that whatever you do, you can do consistently. So if 3 minutes is all you can pull off, do 3 minutes in the morning, 3 minutes in the evening, and just do that. And
Yeah.
again, it's so powerful. So many people have trouble sleeping, not because of, chemicals or inability to sleep. It's because of their mind chatter, because
Yeah.
they're thinking, right? When you talk about people who have insomniacs, so often it's like, well, what was happening? Well, I started thinking about this and that and the other thing. But if you can clear all of that before you go to sleep and just sit in silence and just allow all the stuff, you're not engaging, it's just bubbling up, you're just observing what's coming up, then it's also allowing your mind kind of to talk to you, like letting your soul talk to you. Then what happens is once you start observing yourself and you start becoming more self-aware, then you can take it off the quote unquote mat, you bring it into your daily life, and you'll start noticing you can catch it more in real time. So all of a sudden, like, you get angry, you have a flare up of irritation, and you're like, oh, that was interesting. Wow. Okay.
Where did this come from? Yeah.
From that was really good. So, like, Dee and I will laugh a lot when something like that happens. We'll be like, people will know, like, I'll just laugh and be like, ooh, I think it just got really spicy.
Yeah.
What just happened? Like, what brought that spice on? So, you can kind of start to then bring it into your daily life. And then when you're talking back about intuition, again, you just practice. It's just curiosity. Why don't I just stop being so stuck in my head and just keep asking questions so that I then can start to develop some answers? And then as you start to develop the answers, you start to like have your own inner compass that starts to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And as an inner compass, and it's not work that anyone else can do for you, because your inner compass is not my inner compass, right? What's right for you is not what's right for me. I mean, that's the beauty. We're like all these gorgeous flowers in a garden who need different levels of sunlight, different levels of food, different levels of watering. We're not all the same. And that's not really the intention for us all to be the same. So those
Wow.
are some of the
Yes.
thoughts.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's great. I think that's perfect. I think just like to give, I guess, something to add to that, like just if like, okay, if you're like I don't know if anybody's gonna say this, but someone might be like, okay, well, I just need more. Like I need more. Like, right. So what we would say, like what I would add on to that is like, okay, level one is just that I'm using level one, but whatever. Level one is just that baseline awareness of the breath. Then there's, I would say, two things we could add on to that: pranayama and pratyahara, which are just like breath control and sense withdrawal. So what I would add to that is like, okay, let's just say let's say you want to observe your breath, right? And you notice like you can't almost help but almost start to control it. Then slow it down, right? Let's say like, I would say, there's a book called Breath written by James Nestor. Did a whole bunch of studies on all these different people, and he said basically 5 to 6 second inhales and exhales is like sort of that optimal range. So if I got this YouTube app, it's 6 second in, 6 second out. So if you just need something to concentrate on, you can also just concentrate additionally on just slowing the pace that you breathe in and out, and also emphasize breathing fully and completely. So often we do like shallow breathing, but when you're about to go to sleep or when you're feeling cool and calm and relaxed, you take like slower breaths. But you also know like when you're trying to get the most out of yourself, right? When you're trying to exert yourself, you also take full breaths. So if you put those two things together, full breaths at a slow pace, just see for yourself. And that can be the thing
And
you do
that's
for,
good for Quentin. I would say this is
yeah,
kind of a different practice than the observance practice.
exactly.
Observance is just observance.
Exactly.
There's no control over that at all.
Nothing.
Then comes like another step, like you were saying, like withdrawal of the senses, pratyahara. or control of the breath, which is pranayama.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you can start to layer these on,
Mm-hmm.
which is all can be part of this, concentration practice before you actually start to get to the meditative practice. Your mind is directly, like the pace of your thoughts is directly related to your breath. You can literally slow down the mind. Anybody who's had an anxiety attack knows you don't start with your mind. You would never stop an anxiety attack if you're trying
Yeah.
to start with your mind. A
Yeah.
panic attack, you got to start with your breath, right? There's a reason why they put that bag across your mouth so that you have to slow down and change the way you're breathing. So the breath actually affects the mind and the way that the mind operates. And so if you can slow down your breath, then you're automatically going to slow down the thoughts. And so as you're practicing, once you get past sort of like this initial observance phase, then you're going to want to start having a little bit more control over what you think. And that is the cool part, because then you start realizing, like, just because I think it doesn't make it true, and I can change the thinking, I can change the neural pathways, I can change my nervous system's reaction to things, and I can do that through the breath and then also through the repetition or the focus of the mind. And so then once you start focusing the mind, then that's what we tend to call meditation, although according to Yoga Sutras, we're still not there. Very few people actually reach the meditative state, because when you get to meditation, it's literally like you have achieved it. Meditation is the achievement stage, sort of. So
Let me add one more thing, if I may. So one more thing to add into this that might be relevant, or like is with a little bit. It's a practice I actually got from the Toltec too, and they're very big on will, Raja, or we'll get into that, but just the path of using the will to control the mind. And what they recommended, which I really like, and I think this is very good for just all the things that we're talking about, is just distinguishing what you like, what's necessary, what's not necessary. Just to really developing discernment is really what we're talking about here through practice over time and just practicing consistently. Is they have this one thing where it's like, try to sit still for just they say 5 minutes. I'm gonna say 1 minute, really, but 3 minutes is a good start. Just try to sit still without moving at all. So let's say it's similar to watching the mind, but it's similar to watching you're kind of watching your body, and you'll notice, like, you might be perfectly fine, but you have random itches pop up. You feel like sweat's coming in certain spaces. But then you get to a point where you get beyond that. Like, your mind's like, okay, it's almost like a little kid, like, playing in the mirror, like, I feel this, do this, do this. And then you get to a certain point where you get past that, and this is just a different space. So all of these things I feel like are tools, because, well, they all are legitimately tools. But like, let's say like you've already been to a couple classes, and you do a little bit of breath work here and there. These are different things that you can add into it. And we're saying, Radha said in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, that's sort of like a template for consistency. But you can do this. I personally love to do this in the car. So you can do any of these three: just observe your thoughts as you're driving through traffic, or try to control your breathing by breathing deeply for a period of time, or just, I'm only going to keep my hands on the wheel and just look straight and just only do the movements that are necessary for me to drive. That's like another example. And all of these, we're just trying to get rid of, or not really get rid of, but we're not trying to indulge in extraneous movement. That's kind of the idea. When you're calming your breath, when you're just watching your thoughts, you're not adding any additional movement to the mix, and you're just allowing things to still. So
I think it's a powerful thing, Quentin, when you realize, again, your mind is controlling your body. Your mind, it's not your body that wants to move. It's your mind telling your body you need to move.
Yep.
And so again, having that ability to just sit perfectly still, I think that there's like these are two different practices. So I don't want this to sound like it's a all or nothing sort of thing, because there is a practice for meditation where if you feel discomfort in your body, you just move and you get to a comfortable position again, because you're practicing something different. Then there's a practice of meditation where you sit still and you do not move. You don't move for anything. And that is also a very powerful practice, because it starts to help you realize that you have control over your body. You can, just because you have an itch doesn't mean you have to itch.
Yeah.
And there is nothing that is more challenging than when you have an itch and you
It's so
don't move
true.
to scratch it. It's like I have broken out in like sweats. I mean, like I have felt like I was going to be nauseous and throw up.
Yeah.
I have felt like, because what happens is my body is sending me all these signals saying, you got to move, you got to move, you got to move, you got to move, you got to move. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. You got to itch. You got to like, and when you are just sitting there still and being like, no,
Not at
it's
all.
not going to happen. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Not moving, not moving. It is so crazy and so powerful and so exciting, because
Yes, it
once you
is.
realize that you can have mastery over your physical body, all of these things that you think you can't do, all of these challenging, the places where you quit because you think you can't lift any harder, or you can't push your body any farther, or these things, you don't have to be an Olympic athlete to realize that you have more control over your body than you ever guessed. You can just literally sit still for 5 minutes and say, I am not moving. Like, I will not move.
And feel incredible afterwards. That's
Feel
another thing.
incredible afterwards.
I
Now,
love.
like, there were great yogis. I mean, I know some people who can do that for like an hour and a half easily,
Yeah.
where they sit and they don't move at all for an hour and a half. Mine is probably about an hour. As I've gotten older and like definitely my body's changing, I'm
was gonna say
realizing
that.
like, but when I was like in my 20s, I could easily, or 30s even, maybe even 40s, I could sit for like an hour straight and not move a muscle. No wiggle. Actually, as I've gotten older and my body's changing, I'm realizing like that also has a danger.
Yeah.
So you can do incredible damage to your body by being so rigid. These bodies are our vehicles, and so while it is a great experience, it's not necessarily meant to be done all the time repetitively. That there is a balance that gets to happen where you're like, because sometimes you need to move. Sometimes it is important to respond to your body and not just override your body so much. And yogis are notorious for learning such body mastery that they override their body all the
Yep.
time. And that can do, bodies are physical, they have physics, they have systems, they have stuff that happens. So it's a wonderful thing to know that you can override your body, but it is not necessarily the best choice to make on a daily basis, to be constantly overriding your body like that, because your body is sending you signals for a reason. Your body's not trying to be your enemy. Your body's like, react to this because, if you're sitting and you're in a position that's uncomfortable and your back hurts, your body's saying you're not ready.
Yeah.
Strengthen your back, right?
Yeah.
Get
Or
stronger.
eat better.
And you can
Yeah.
eat better, or just cut down on the sugar. Your body's constantly trying to send you signals. And in my experience, a lot of yogis look to sort of the advanced ancient yogis who were standing on one leg in the, Ganges for 5 years or whatever. There's
Yeah.
crazy practices that you read about that they were doing. And Swami Satchidananda was very clear. He was like, you do not need to do those to attain enlightenment. That
Yeah.
is not necessary. You can do it in a way that preserves your physical body, because we only get one body so far. We haven't learned how to transfer our consciousness out into something else. And so don't do things that are going to destroy your body. And the same thing with your asana practice. It is great to challenge yourself. It is great to do cool things, but I can't tell you how many yoga teachers I know, really famous, really big, really amazing yoga teachers across all traditions, who are now in their 50s, 60s, 70s, who are all having to have knee replacements, hip replacements. Even me sitting on the floor as much as I did, and with my hips, like I'm starting to have some wear and tear on my hips now, just from living that lifestyle. So do not sacrifice your physical vehicle in the desire to do these intense yogic practices. So there's a balance. And that is the challenge with everything, right? You have to find that balance, because We want extremes. We want to be extreme. We want to be like, I'm going to sit for an hour and a half and not move, and I'm going to do it every day, and like I'm going to overcome my body. And okay, but you're probably going to pay some prices for that if you're constantly overriding. So it's one thing to be able to learn to do that mastery. It's a whole other thing to realize like there's also a balance, and there has to be a kindness and a compassion towards the body. Same with like restrictive eating. Restrictive eating is very popular in yoga circles. It is great to learn how food can be medicine and how you can heal your body with food. But I see people go so far beyond who are just like, I just eat apples and,
Yeah,
almonds,
I
and that's
eat.
all I
Yeah,
eat. I'm like, okay. And I think that there can be periods of time where that can be good, but you also have to pay attention. I say this a lot with people becoming vegan, honestly. Like, I think veganism can be done incredibly well, and it's so brilliant, and it's like kind to the animals and kind to the earth and kind to everything. But you have to do it in a way that is healthy for your body, and you have to do it mindfully and carefully. You can't just be like, I'm just going to stop eating everything. Or vegetarians, like it used to be really big with vegetarians, and then vegetarians would be like eating pasta all the time. And
yeah.
all they were eating was like carbs. And you're like, I
Nah.
mean, vegetarian is vegetables, right? Like that's,
Yeah,
if you're going to become vegetarian, like the core of the core of everybody's diet, I think, should be vegetables, fruits and vegetables with whatever else added in you want. But there can be just such extremes that people go to
mm.
that's not yoga. There's
You know,
nothing extreme about yoga.
yeah, I feel that. I think all of that, everything that you just said, like, is related to sort of like, the society that we're in where, um, how do I best phrase this? I'll put it this way. So, sort of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, and trying to wrap everything up together is like, you know, there there's really this give and play of seriousness about life, and also like kind of like an ease with life, where it's like, it does matter. These things are important. Taking care of your body, sort of these practices to help calm the mind, like healing. These things are like, they seem serious. And then also at the same time, the whole time, everything that's done is done. Everything, it's like, and there's this energy of seriousness where it's like, oh, oh my God, if I go to, using the example earlier, if I go to jail or if I go to these protests, like these things are big, huge events. Like this is important. And as yogis, or just like yoga, as what I found from it is it teaches sort of like a more easeful way to look at life where, hey, things that happen. They're meant to happen that way. Like, and you just don't, understand that these things are happening essentially for your benefit. It might not be easy to tell, but all things are acting for your good, as we would say, like good, quote unquote good. But for you to realize that you're source, to realize that your godliness, to realize that no, this mind is an incredible tool that creates. The word is a creative tool, and it can create the reality that we'd like to live in. And the thing that's on a lot of people's mind is just like, a lot of people feel, I would say, I can't speak for all the people in my generation, but we're talking about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. We were all raised with that document. And a lot of us feel like, a lot of us, and maybe for many generations, but this generation in particular, I feel like it's a little bit sharper because we as individuals are a little bit more powerful. Like it is true that like we were saying
Yeah.
earlier, we
No.
emphasize, but the emphasis on the individual has made the individual more powerful, and the individual is um seen as an individual unit of God, as you like another way to put it. It's like if God is like the cumulative machine of all things, like then like and you want each, like I'll use a chain as an example. Like you use as an example, like a chain is like beneficial when all the links are together, but like the chain strength is dependent on the individual strength of each link of chain, and then the strength of their connection to each other. Like those two things make up the strength of a chain. And thinking about like sort of this question of intuition and like right action and how to respond. I think what we're saying is try to develop if you feel like that, if you feel like you're navigating life and there are a bunch of internal turmoil going on and like you feel like you're intuitive, you have your heart or your intuition saying one thing and you have society saying another thing. I think the key here is stilling the mind. So whatever practice that is that you can implement in the moment. On a previous podcast we talked about box breathing. Maybe you can even do like what I like to do is like in the moment of an argument, let's say, or in the moment of your friend grilling you about going to the protest or not, for example, just be like, I'm not going to do anything except observe for the next 2 minutes. And you can even tell them, hey, I need 5 minutes to collect myself, and then I'll give you an answer.
Yeah.
And
Great
then
practice. Mm.
exactly, and then from there, you have the mindset of okay, let's say this is a protest where I could hypothetically get arrested, like using this example, the high stakes situation. You say, okay, what Swami Shashananda used to say, which I think is a really good advice, is like, if you don't know it's going to hurt you for sure, try it. Try it. So like, if you're like, okay, I don't really know, but if you know, like, if just try it, right? So let's say, okay, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the protest. I don't know for sure that I'm going to get arrested, but I do know there's an opportunity I can go. Then each moment while you're in that experience, you can use that, like maybe you're nervous, there's something you're nervous about. You can use that nervousness as just a prompt to be observant, right? Okay, I need to practice. Okay, try to any of the things that resonate with you that we've talked about, these different practices, a combination of them. And then I'll always say prayer is always an option.
Yeah.
You can always pray. But
Quentin, one of the things that the Yoga Sutras, one question they talk about asking when you're talking about a perfect action is, does it bring harm to no one and good to someone? If you can hit both of those points, like it brings harm to no one and it does good for someone, then you know that it's a perfect action. And so if you are questioning yourself, like you're saying, just taking a moment and asking, that's one question that the Yoga Sutra says you can always ground yourself in when you're looking at whether you should take an action or not.
Perfect. And then so now now you're at the protest. You're breathing slowly. You're concentrating on you're paying attention to your internal world. So then, if you do have a conscious response or an intuition that says now's the time to leave, respond to it, right? Because you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
And
And
you're
this is
more
what we're saying.
likely, if you're in this state, you're more likely to get that
Exactly.
message.
You're more likely,
Yeah.
and you will get those messages. And this is what we're saying is like clear-mindedness also has, and this is in the sutras. One of the blessings it does is it does allow us to avoid pain that has not come yet. It gives you like an opportunity to, like we're saying, get a little bit of space between really our fears. You know what I'm saying? Like these anxieties, this depression thought that we're talking about is really like mental activity, for lack of a better word. And these practices that help us still the mind, they give us just space to exist in our selfness and our I amness, and then act from a place of discernment. And where our heart can go, okay, you can go like, okay, my intuition is telling me to do this, right? I'm going to pause, give my mind a second to still, and then I can use my mind as a tool to help implement whatever it is. And I love that curious attitude. And I really feel like that's extremely important because it's like, I don't have to be there the whole time. I'm just there. I might only need to be there for one thing. There might be a person there that I meet or whatever. I'm still working on this cause, but you're curious and open to seeing what else might be there, what else might be available, in that present experience, and then also internally. And it helps you like make better decisions, or helps you like feel more confident in making decisions, because like what Radha said, it's like if I make a good decision or a bad decision, if it's done, then it's done. And I know like, okay, this, you can, even if you do get arrested or that situation comes, you can still do the practices. You can still take a second to calm the mind. And now, and like any of us that have been locked up, especially like yogis that have been locked up, you know, it even gives you an opportunity to practice, you know, like, so each step of the way you can address that way, but you can still end that protest, be like, I'm not going to do actions that are going to intentionally harm others. I'm not going to intentionally do things that are going to be non-beneficial to others. Helping others isn't convoluted. I think there's a whole belief, you know, string through peace or preemptive strikes. These types of things are like, these are kind of like, ideas like, oh no, I'm protesting and I'm destroying Macy's for you, Quentin. I'm like, what? Like, I was gonna go to Macy's tomorrow. Now I can't. You actually stole all the stuff that was in it.
Right.
So like there's like this energy of
I think that goes back to that question, right? Like, did
yeah,
this action bring harm to no
did
one,
his
and did
action
this
bring
harm
harm?
one?
Did it bring harm? And it's like, and that's
Yeah.
it. Not to the person, because sometimes we're like, oh, I want to harm this person as an act of justice, or you actually feel it's right to harm this person. And I think what we're saying is like, take a hands-off approach, take a curious approach to life, and understand that no person can escape the consequences of their own actions, me or them. So whoever it is that you feel like has wronged you, whoever it is that you feel like has like done something to you, you do not need to harm them. It is not necessarily helping to harm them, right? Even people that have done things to you directly that are egregious, understanding that like that path forward is a natural, might be like an instinct or an urge, but that's an urge that is self-destructive, and that self-destruction only causes more destruction to you. And
You know what else is self-destructive? Is beating yourself up after the fact.
exactly.
So you did it.
Yeah, it's like you did it. You've
You
dealt
did
with
it.
this.
It's over. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just be like, okay, let me try and do better the next time. Like, let me make different choices.
Yeah.
But beating yourself up over something. So if you're listening to this and you looted Macy's,
Yeah. I forgive you. No.
we forgive you. But the question is, do you forgive yourself? Like that's
Exactly.
really a powerful one, because the truth is, right action, quote unquote, right action. And I use quote unquote because I really hate this idea of hate. I dislike the idea of good and bad,
Yeah.
right and wrong, because I really do think like it's all the perspectives with which you're looking at it. And I think we fall into like these judgment cycles when we think of things as right and wrong. So let's go back to the protests in the 60s. When they were sitting down and protesting, and they knew that the cops were going to come beat them with billy clubs, or they were going to turn, the fire hoses on them. Was that a right action on their part? It brought good to someone, but did it do harm to no one? No, absolutely. It did harm to their own physical self.
Exactly.
It did harm to their own bodies. So yeah, according to the Yoga Sutras, was that a right action? Was it the perfect action? No, it was not a perfect action. So don't like use this gauge and then make your life more challenging and feel guilty and use it as something to punish and beat yourself up with. It's just a question to ask, to make yourself curious again about what you're doing. And so sometimes you're going to say, maybe it doesn't meet all the criteria, but I think it's close enough that I'm going to take this action. And then there may be a price afterwards. And then afterwards you go, the wrong price on that one.
Like,
and then you go, oh, well, it's done. God's will. What am I going to do about it? Right. So I think also like being forgiving, and I think the only way we become forgiving of others is if we're forgiving of ourselves. And so not judging ourselves and not being hard on ourselves about the choices we make is going to be really key to making sure that we're not, in turn judging everyone around us. And I think that's a challenging one because we all are taking a lot of action every day, right, Quentin?
Yeah. I was going to say like I feel like the last thing I want to say, and this goes to everything, it's like the power of redemption. And we've been saying God's name a lot or using God as a reference, but there is a personal part. There is a personality essence of it, if you will. And it does matter to say, like, it does matter internally to yourself to be like, I forgive myself. I apologize for, like I didn't. It's okay to do that. You don't have to say it to nobody. You don't have to like write it on a poster board. You don't have to tweet it. But all these things that you feel like are on your mind, we use conscious in a different way, but on your conscious, really what we mean is on your mind. It's on your memory and it's running. And that's why we say like, let bygones be bygones. Like these things remove that from your mental space so that you can then engage with like the active living God that's always trying to speak with you and guide you, that jaw that we're talking about that's always interacting. And when you spend so much time in the past and worrying about like, or you know, past or future or whatever, like things that you might do or have to do or things that you've done that you, either of which you're imagining them in a negative internal state, or experiencing negative emotions, like you can be like, hey, these things happened and I'm sorry. And sometimes apologize to yourself. Be like, I did that to you know, even like, yeah, I mean like, you know, even using that as an example, like Martin Luther King got killed before those bills came through. You know what I mean? Like they took him out before it really,
Yeah.
really even so like, so there's even a part where it's like,
You think
hey,
about what that did to his family.
yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so there's always layers to this where it's like, hey, even as a warrior, just because you're fighting does not mean you're going to win this fight exactly how you think it is. Like, so just do your duty. Just practice observance of like the fact that like, hey, what's done is done. These things happen. I'm trying my best in each moment and realizing that the things that I have done in the past that might have hurt others, I'm either dealing with that karma now, but ultimately all is forgiven. And that like that understanding that like a lot of us live in just perpetual fear of past actions that we've done because we keep remembering them. So it's like, oh, I remember this bad thing I did. I need to be punished today. And there's that, since we are that creator, that whatever's in our mind, and this is really the key of observing the mind, is because you realize good, bad, or indifferent, like the things that you focus on, you start to see around you. There is a
Mhm.
correlation between even miscellaneous random thoughts in your reality. So what you concentrate on, what you pour your attention to, I feel like starts to manifest. And that's why concentrating on this peace of mind that we're talking about, developing the concentration to essentially be peaceful, manifests peaceful scenarios in which you get to live and play in. And
Yeah.
like, that is really like what I'd like for folks to taste and see, to have more faith. And really what we mean by faith is almost that reflex to be like, oh, it's God's will, oh, it's okay, oh, things happen for a reason. Like that is where we're kind of grouping up into that faith, developing strong faith. And and when you have that perspective, it's much more harder to go into fearful thought patterns just automatically. It's hard,
It
it's
is.
harder to be like, a lot of us are, like we said, are acting out of fear, out of retaliation, out of revenge, rather than acting out of duty, out of responsibility, out of capacity, out of love. Being like, hey, this is how I can serve. This is what I can do.
And I would say the
Yeah,
fearful thought patterns maybe will never stop. Remember, there's chemical components to our brains.
true.
There's chemical components to thought patterns. You may have a chemical imbalance.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
just like some people have diabetes, some people have type 1 diabetes. We haven't figured out how to fix all that with diet and exercise. You know, some people
100%.
are going to have chemically prone brains. And so, even if you think the negative thought patterns, what will happen is you will be able to kind of separate yourself out from it a little bit more and just be like, oh, that's just a negative thought pattern. That's
Mm.
not me. It's not who I am. It's not what I'm about. And so therefore you just have a little bit of skill to be able to be like, you know, I have a lot of chemical imbalances.
Mm.
There's lots of chemical stuff that happens in my brain. Some of it's neurological, some of it's habits, some of it's stuff that like, you know, just it's over various medications that I took over the years, the way they
Yeah.
transform my brain. But what I do have also is the ability to be like, oh, my poor little, she's so grumpy this morning. Oh, she's in such a bad mood. Oh gosh, everything's terrible, isn't it? You poor little thing. Okay,
Yeah.
let's be a little kind to you today.
Mm.
Because I can step back from it and realize my thoughts are not myself. So even if I'm thinking like, and believe me, some days my brain is really, really, really creepy to be around. You know,
Mm.
that's just the reality of the chemical processes sometimes, or the hormonal fluctuations or stuff happening. So don't think that like all that stuff's going to stop.
Mm.
Life, the world, everything doesn't stop. But what happens is the way that you engage with it
Mm.
transforms. And so now I can be present, I can be kinder, I can react in the moment. I have skill sets because I realize that just because I think it doesn't make it true. And so I can also say, okay, sweet one, go sit in the corner. I've got some work to do right now. Just like this. I wanted to do this podcast today. My brain woke up this morning and was like, blah, blah, had a lot of noise. And I don't know, like we may hit stop and then I may go lay in bed for a little while and take a nap. I don't know what's going to happen after this, but I know that at least for now I can be like, okay, I hear you. You're having a rough morning. I'm just going to put you aside right now. And we're just going to set those aside because I have something else I want to do right now. And this matters to me. And we're going to have this great conversation. And so I can't have your chattering in the background while I'm trying to have this conversation. So it's like, don't think that everything's just going to disappear and your life's going to be perfect and all your ailments and your health is going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, there are human physical limitations. There are human mind limitations. But they're not as much as you think. Absolutely.
100%. I love that. I love that you said it. I think that's a good place to end it. It's not as much as you think.
It's not as much as you think.
A lot has been built on it, but it's not. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I had a lot of fun.
When we come back, I want to, next time, or, we touched on this a little bit, and I don't want to go into it today because I actually want to read up a little bit more about it. I was reading something about polyvagal theory this morning about your nervous system because obviously I'm having all these like neurological things happening now from continued stress and trauma and how it literally transforms your nervous system, right? So then like when you've had this consistently, your nervous system is just going to react differently. But one of the things they were talking about was, they've been doing a lot of studies on this recently, is how a calm person or a calm nervous system can walk into a room and transform everybody else's nervous systems. It can have a physical effect on people. So I just want you to take this idea and maybe even like go look up some studies yourself while you're waiting for us to talk about it. Because think about if you are going to a protest. Think about if you were going out there in the world and you were going there with a calm system. You could literally transform. A perfect example is Swami Satchidananda opened Woodstock. Woodstock was like the most peaceful festival. Like I don't think they've had like that size festival that didn't erupt in some sort of violence or had some sort of deaths or some sort of craziness that happened. And one of the things that the creators of Woodstock repeatedly said, that they truly believe that part of the reason why the festival was the way that it was because they chose to have Swami Satchidananda come and bring his energy into the space at the very beginning of the festival. Science is now starting to actually be able to measure that because you can measure now, right? All of these brain, physical sensations, what your nervous system is doing, how your body's reacting. And they're realizing that when they bring someone with a calm energy, a calm nervous system, a balanced system into a room, it actually, all the other systems in the room will start to self-regulate and regulate to match that person's energy, which is crazy and exciting. So,
wow,
we'll talk about that more.
I love that.
Yeah, that's some really cool science that they're working on right now that I think is really powerful and can make a huge difference in how you show up in the world and how you also have an influence and effect on people around you. So put a pin in that one.
Yeah. All right. I'd love to talk about that.
Thank you, Quentin. Thank you for being here again. Quentin's in Denver. Check out the links so that you know where to find him. Hit him up for some of his yoga classes. And we got some plans for this channel again. Hopefully, once we kind of get the podcast launched and things are moving along. I haven't even talked to Quentin about this formally yet, but I'm hoping that maybe we'll do like also a recorded class. You'll teach a class so that people could reference that class. And so even those of you who aren't in Denver could have the benefit of going to one of Quentin's classes, or maybe we could even do a recording outdoors of one of your classes, and then people could have that. So we'll have a recording for everybody. Because I think, having more resources and more practice resources is really important. So that's what we're here to do.
Thank you. I had so much fun talking to you.
So fun. I hope the rest of you are enjoying yourselves as much as Quentin and I are.
I'm sure. All right. Well, till next time. All
All
right.
right. Thank you. Until next time. Om Om.